Well, there's been a lot of talk about tubeless currently, and GC Performance recently just did a video comparing tubes should I say, with tubeless, and he did a really good video on that. He got professional guys in to do it. Very high quality video, so go check that one out. But just talking about tubeless in general, tubeless have been around for a long time. I remember when I got back into cycling, which was some 15 odd years ago, and I brought my old Cerrone steel frame down to the bike shop. It had tubeless on it and Shimano 600, and yeah, I sold that bike, but I shouldn't have sold it. That was a nice bike. Well, anyway, the guy in the shop goes, "Hey, what are you running these tubeless for, man? You know, no one runs these tubeless anymore. Hey, look, we've got these new Hutchison tubeless that don't get flats. You know, would you like to have those fitted to the bike?" Well, anyway, I said, like, just hang on a sec. I went home, did some research, and there wasn't really any good reviews on this technology. They were all pretty, So at the time I said no, and I just got normal clinches. But I ended up transferring back to tubeless because I just felt better running tubeless, and I didn't think clinches were as puncture resistant and easy to run and easy to fit as tubeless. Maybe that's because I was used to them, I was familiar with them, and I was comfortable with them. But anyway, I went back to tubeless. So talking about tubeless, where have they come in the last 15 odd years? So let's roll our intro and let's have a bit of a talk about why has there been such a slow uptake with tubeless? Now, tubeless, it might seem like there's this big push lately, and I do think that that is the case. And it's the first time we've actually seen tubeless fitted as a standard product to new bikes, and Giant are doing this. They're actually fitting hookless with tubeless technology on them from the factory. So that is something new, because before they just came with clinches. If you wanted to run tubeless, you had to opt to buy them. And I think that's where the big pushes come. The manufacturers now are so bought into the technology that now they're fitting it as OEM product to their bicycles. So why has it taken so long to take up? Now, the problem is there's been a number of problems. First of all, in the old days, they were pretty like riding concrete. To get the construction of the tire and to get the threads into it so it couldn't stretch, because that's how they actually stay on the rim. It's not because of the hooks, mostly. It's got to do with these threads in the tire that can't stretch, so it can't expand to come off the rim. So it's basically held on, it can't expand. So it's held there, so it can't expand to roll out of the hooks. So that's what actually happens and how the technology works. But they've got them better, and what they've done is they've had problem with the sealants working, because sealant technology hasn't really advanced. I know Silka have got a product out, but really all they've done is put in ground up carbon fibre in it. It's still the same old sealant, the liquid's still the same. They're just using a different component inside the sealant to make it more effective at sealing holes. But the downside to that is that it seals everything. It seals your valve, it seals your pump, it seals the whole lot, because it actually works too good. But it is good to see that companies like Silka are trying different things to try and improve sealant, because I think that's one of the weaknesses of tubeless. Well, anyway, so to combat that, what the manufacturers have done, they've promoted wider tyres, because once you get a wider tyre, you've got more air volume, and the whole air volume acts as a shock absorber. And that's why all of these things like Tannis, these solid tyres, just feel like concrete, because even though you may have a small tyre like a 23mm, the whole air capacity acts as a shock absorber when you're riding the bike. It's not just the area where you're hitting the bump. And that's the advantage of pneumatic tyres. But with tubeless, what they've managed to do is they've adapted the rims, they've adapted the tyres, they've made them bigger, they can run them at lower pressure, so now they don't have to make the tyres so strong, and the threads aren't under so much stress in the tyre because the pressures are much lower, and the sealant works at lower pressures much more effectively. So they've got that technology to work a lot better than it did, say, 15 years ago. So it's taking them over a decade to get the tubeless technology to where it is today. And even now, still, the tubeless technology has issues. In the mountain bike world, when they're running at really low pressures, the tyres come away from the rims and they get what they call burping, and now they also put inserts in to stop that burping because it holds the tyre against those hooks or those hookless parts where the interface is between the tyre and the rim. But today, in the road, which is basically what this channel is about, I talk mostly about road cycling, not mountain bike cycling. I'm not that tuned into that area, so I try to keep away from it because I'm probably just talking rubbish. But with the road cycling, the technology now is getting better because now that they're getting the tyres to a lower pressure, you can run 60, 70 psi, as we've seen GC Performance do. He was running 72 psi in a 28 mil. Maybe a 32 mil might have been better at his weight, who knows? But at the end of the day, once you run at those lower pressures, the sealant is far, far more effective. So you don't have to worry about the higher pressures leaking from the rim and the tyre. The sealant works much more effectively. If you get a puncture, the sealant works at those lower pressures much better. Whilst when we used to run tyres at 80, 90 psi, the sealant really struggles to hold the repair on the tyre because there's so much force, there's so much pressure behind that part where it's been repaired. So in conclusion, even though tubeless technology has got a hell of a lot better than it was 15 years ago when it was first basically put in front of me and said, hey Waynos, would you like to try this technology? Today they're a lot better. And even the language they use to explain the technology is different. They talk about tubeless ready rims. Back in the old days it was called two-way rims. They were just called tubeless ready, they weren't called TLR. That's the new technology now, the new wording they're using. But they have got a lot better, and the tyres now are not as hard, they're a lot softer. But the biggest issue with tubeless, and still, which is something that is basically makes the bicycle industry not being able to really make all of these new technologies work that well, is their quality control and their adherence to specifications. And this is the same with tubeless tyres. What we see is we've got different rims, we've got different tyres, they're different widths, they're using a different manufacturing or slightly different hook, or they're using a slightly different hookless technology, because if you go and look at some of the websites like Envy, they have like a little extra piece that holds the hookless in. Not all hookless companies or manufacturers are adhering to that standard, and that's the problem, because you might have one tyre that fits on a rim and you go, man, what's everyone complaining about these tubeless? This just goes on straight away. And then you'll buy a different brand of tyre, or they update the tyre to a different design. All of a sudden you have a lot of problem getting on the rim, or you buy a different rim because you want some deeper rims, and then you find that tyre that was your favourite tyre doesn't fit on the new rim. And this is the problem, because they haven't standardised across the industry and maintained very specific tolerances. And that's what Mavic tried to do. They tried to develop it, and they did. They had a tyre that you could run on their rim without any sealant, because that's just like how a car tyre works. And that's the problem. The car industry, their tolerances are much better, so when you put a tyre on a car, they just put like a bit of sealant paste, like blue paste on the tyre, and it seals. You don't have to run sealant in your car tyre to make it so it doesn't lose air. You can run your car for months without even pumping it up. But in the bicycle world, you try and do that and you'll find your tyre will be flat in a couple of hours. And that is the issue. It's not so much the technology is bad, it's just that the bike industry, as with a lot of things they do, their manufacturing adherence to specifications is very poor. If everyone said, hey look, we're going to make our hooks and we're going to make our tyre rib to a very accurate specification, we're all going to agree on that specification, we could run our tubeless without any sealant, we could just put our sealant in when we had a puncture, just put it in through the valve, it'd all be hunky-dory. But unfortunately, for some reason, they can't do that. Even with this European standard, the ETRTO, not all the manufacturers are following it. Some do, some don't. And this is the issue with the whole industry. Until they really get up to another level, like the automotive industry is, or other manufacturers where specification standards are adhered to, we're going to have this continuing problem of some products work, some products don't work. And what it does is it leaves a bad taste in the consumer's mouth. And what they do is then they go away from that territory. You go, what the hell? There's all this sealant and it's a mess and it won't go on the rim and I have to buy special equipment. I've got this special pump, still won't seal. I've taken it down the garage using compression. I've had it with these tubeless tyres. When probably that's just an incompatibility issue. Okay guys, leave your comments down below. Have you experienced this where you've had tyres that fit on your rims 100%? No issue, you've tried a different brand, and then you've had all sorts of problems. That's where I'm going to leave it, guys, and I will see you next vid. Cheers.